Hello again. If you've watched my previous videos, you'll know that I'm in the process of building a swimming pool. In the last video, I shared a bit more detail around how I'm getting the base ready for the steelwork and the concrete pour. In this video, I'm going to continue working on the base and I'm going to start the steelwork. Enjoy! So one of the last things I did in the last video was to add a thin layer of sand in the base. The next thing I needed to do was to make the sand nice and level at the right height so that I can lay the insulation on top of it. In order to do this, I made a bar that was offset on the top of the frame, and I used this bar with some help to drag it from one end of the pool to the other, flattening the sand off at the right height as we went from end to end. In the last video, I also finished building a timber frame, which is going to contain the concrete when it's poured. The next thing to do was to make a mortar mix and secure the frame exactly where it needs to be to stop it moving when the concrete is poured near it. It's really important to make sure that the frame is bang on so that the finished height of the pool is where I want it. Next up was to add some protective plastic sheeting on top of the sand so the insulation can go on top of it. This is not an essential step, I only did it to protect the insulation. Then it was time to add the insulation on top of the plastic sheeting. The XPS insulation that goes on top of this plastic sheet will have another layer of plastic sheeting on top of it. When the concrete is poured on top, sandwiching the insulation between the two membranes, any standing water that is in there will be forced out. XPS insulation has excellent resistance to water absorption, so I'm not particularly concerned about water ingress in the insulation. I'm using a 40mm XPS insulation that's going to go right across the base. This XPS insulation has also got a really high compressive strength. Initially, I just tried to add the insulation in the hull, but I only ordered just enough insulation to fit the area, so I needed to use a bit of science in order to make sure that I could put it in an optimum way to make sure that it wasn't any waste. Once this was done, the insulation went down fairly quickly. Then I added a second layer of plastic sheeting, this time with jointing tape to make sure that this layer was effectively a nice damp-proof membrane to stop water rising up into the concrete. Strong winds were forecast that night, so I added some small concrete bits onto the sheet to stop it from blowing away and ended up in next door's garden. The next day, the steel arrived and was carefully unloaded onto the driveway. This included the longer steel lengths for the walls, the L-bars for the corners and the base, and finally the large mesh 8mm pieces that will go inside the floor slab. I got some help to move the steel into the garden. This stuff is pretty awkward to handle by yourself. Then it was time to lay the first layer of steel mesh in the hull. I decided to use 3.5 sheets with a small overlap. I needed to trim the steel sheets down slightly, and I just used a small 4-inch disc cutter to do this. I cut the first steel sheet down to size and then removed the weights of the plastic and then started to manoeuvre the first sheet into the hull. I tried lifting one of the steel sheets into the hole by myself. I quickly realised this was a bad idea So I decided to continue cutting down the other lengths of the other steel sheets and wait for help to get the rest of the sheets into the hull. I also rigged up the camera to get some nice blurry B-roll. Then some help arrived and we faffed around with the second plastic sheet layer to make sure it fitted nicely, and we started lifting some of the steel into the hull. After a bit more repositioning, I wanted a bit more of an overlap, so I decided to go with 4 full-size steel sheets in the bottom with an overlap of 600mm across each sheet. If you are finding these videos interesting and useful, please feel free to like and subscribe, and also maybe post a comment and tell me about any projects that you're doing that might be similar, or feel free to ask questions or tell me what I'm doing wrong. Or also let me know maybe if there's any more detail that you'd like to see with regards to what I'm doing. Back to the video. The next step was to tie the steel sheets in the base together. I used some 6-inch loop ties and a helical kind of hand twisting tool to tie them together nice and easily. Once I'd figured out how to use the tool, I proceeded to tie all of the sheets together. The next step was to raise the first layer of steel off the base by 50mm to make sure that the steel is correctly positioned vertically within the hull. I did order some pre-cut 50mm castles to raise the steel, but these were out of stock, so I ended up going with some 50mm concrete bars that you just break up to size and then you can position those. I positioned these 400mm, every 400mm in the hull, and then raised the entire first layer of steel off the ground. And then this happened. I had hoped to get all the steel work done in time for this video, but I am filming this in real time and I am also at the mercy of the elements, so I'll continue adding the steel and hopefully finishing that off in the next video. I did also start clearing a small area next to the pool to pour a concrete slab when I get the concrete base poured for the pool, so that I can build a small outbuilding that will house some of the pool equipment and might double up as a bit of a storage area, shed, garden shed as well. Hopefully I'll be able to make a bit more progress in the coming weeks, and the next video should see all the steel work done in the hull and ready for the concrete pour. See you next time.